Hello, I'm Linda Ann at Studio ABC SEE, and I'm doing a little different video today. If you watch till the end, you'll understand what I mean. This is a watercolor sheet that was a wipe-off sheet when I was doing another watercolor. It has way too much yellow in it. It's just not pretty at all. Sometimes the wipe-off sheets are pretty. This one isn't. I'm going to see what I can do with it, and I have something in mind. I'm going to work with some stencils, and let's see where we go with this. These are twinkling H2Os, and I'll be working first with the color Cinnamon. Be sure that before you begin that you spritz the twinkling H2Os with water at least 5 minutes before you start. Here's the stencil I want to use, but I'm going to flip it over on the back side because I like the way I can position this on the page better. And I'm just kind of trying to figure out the best placement. I'm going to tape off some of the areas that are close to the castle because I don't want them, and this will help me to avoid those areas just in case I get a little crazy with my paintbrush. Okay, so today I'm going to use a brush. I'm not going to use a sponge. I think I'll get more control with a brush, kind of a dry brushing technique. Not really dry brushing, but almost at a dry brush stage. Well, okay, my intent was to do it close to dry brushing, but it ended up with an awful lot of pigment on it, and I'm just working with that. I think I can still make this work the way I want to. I want most of the pigment to be over on the left hand side, and that will be so I can have a shadowed area. This is a fantasy picture, so I'm not really, I don't have to adhere to any rules. I can make my light come in from several different directions because it is fantasy. I always keep 2 containers of water beside me when I'm doing any kind of watercolor. One is for rinsing off my brush, and the other one is so that I can add water to the pigment, clean water to the pigment. So I always have a little container and a large container for washing. Sometimes when I go back to voice over my videos, I forget what color it is that I actually used, and I've got my paints all put up, and so anyway, this is a good way for me to keep up with them. I'm going to dip into Good News. I'm going to mix the Good News with the Cinnamon that I've already used, and that should make a darker color, I'm hoping. But I'm going to use a lot of water with it. We'll see what we get there. This is just a kid's stencil from the kids department, and I'm going to move it and put it back into the right position. After I lifted it, it wasn't sitting quite correctly. So now I can go in with this mixture of color that I have, and it, like I said, it's Good News and a mixture of the Cinnamon with it. Now those are 2 colors that are straight across from each other on the color wheel. So if you're afraid of mud, just keep in mind that you don't go equal amounts in these. You go to one side or the other. I would either have more Cinnamon or more Good News. The next twinkling H2O I'm using is Anthurium. I don't know why I chose these colors. It just seemed like a good idea at the time, and I'm playing. This is kind of like a journal page. I don't necessarily do journals, but I do things that don't turn out like I think they should, and this was a wipe-off page anyway, so if it doesn't turn out perfectly, well, so maybe I'll learn something as I go. I tried to get a lighter area right in that front little tower, because then that'll make it come forward with that darker behind it and look like some maybe fantasy light is shining upon it. So I'm darkening all the way around it. And that's looking pretty good, so let's take a peek again. Okay, my lines aren't definite, and that won't be a problem because I had planned on going back painting in some of these areas anyway, but I think I might end up using a marker to define some of the areas later. So we're okay right now. And at least those colors knocked down some of that mustard yellow that I had in there. That was just too much yellow for me. I like almost every color. I guess I do like every color, but the yellow was just a little overwhelming. So let's go back to the previous color that we used, the Good News color. And I don't know how long it's going to last for me to write these colors up here because it's slowing down my work. I'm not sure that I want to do this, but it was an idea. Let's add to those bushy areas and anchor that castle to the ground. That looks pretty good while it's wet, but I realize that watercolor dries much lighter than it goes on the page, so I may have to come back and add some more layers later. Let's add a little pathway coming out from the door now. And the Good News and the cinnamon have mixed again, or it may be the anthurium that I mixed with it. At this point I'm not sure. But you do see some areas where the green and the red are together there. I'm trying to put in some little trees in the background. And picking up some of this paint and moving it around because it's awfully wet in some areas. Of course, I have to get my turquoise color in, so let's try some zeal turquoise? How about teal zircon? I'll dab that around into some of these green areas to give those bushes some shadows. Now I need to balance my color, so I need some on the other side of the page. Well, as things go back in the atmosphere, they become bluer and bluer and bluer. So let me try to put in a line of trees back here that looks like it's behind these other trees with a bluish, a teal zircon color. And really, I probably should have faded out the edges, feathered out the edges more, because as it goes back, it gets less clear. This can also kind of serve as a shadow, and when you put it over yellow, it's going to turn green. I almost see the indication of some little houses along the horizon back there. I probably should have worked with that, but I didn't see it at the time. So let's pop some sky blue into this painting. Just a few swipes of that up in the top area of the painting should give me a bit of sky, or the hint of a sky peeking through. Have you ever seen a red castle before? I haven't. That's why I made it. Back to the cinnamon. And speaking of the red, I don't want all the red in one place, even though that's my center of interest, and that's where, and of course, centers of interest aren't in the center. I like them off to one side, but that's my center of interest, is that castle. But I want to bring the colors out so it leads your eye into the castle. A few little flowers on the other side coming toward the front of the painting will create that little path from the door out towards you, and it pulls your eye in from the bottom of the canvas into the castle. I feel like I need a suggestion of some leaves, some foliage as I come forward, so I'm adding that now. Now I'm going to develop the area up behind the castle. This doesn't really look like trees yet, so the suggestion of a few branches and trunks here in the background will help that. At this point, things are coming along fairly nicely. I think it looks better than the Wipe Off page did, and I think I'll be able to complete this painting. And I stress, at this point. seeing an area back here that would make a terrific rainbow. So I'm actually putting some water on here, trying to move this paint along that arch that I see and dab some of it off so that I can put a little more color into that area and make a rainbow behind the castle. Okay, I just have a problem. That's looking like trees up in that area, and I really don't want trees behind the rainbow, so I'm trying to get rid of it. Trying to wipe back some of the paint, but it's already set so long and so ingrained that I'm afraid I'm scrubbing down to the paper. I'm feeling the need for a little more balance of color on this side, so that's what these brush strokes are all about. I'm going to bring back my stencil and look at it for reference and use my Sharpie pen here to just outline some of the main details that I lost in the castle. I'm still bothered by that area where I want the rainbow to go behind the castle, so I keep trying to dab it off, and I end up taking off just a whole lot of the paint because I figure I can always put that back in. I'm beginning to realize that a black pen wasn't my best choice. I think a sepia color would have worked a lot better on this particular painting. I'm going to bring back the stencil and put back in the top of that tower that I pulled the paint off, where I pulled the paint off earlier. And then maybe it won't look like trees in front of a rainbow. And I think I'll give the flag a little bit different color. Oh dear. Well, that didn't work. Apparently the paper was still too wet. It bled under. I'll see if I can take it back off again, and I can't. So what to do? Only thing I can think of at this point is make a tree out of this, so that a branch is coming up from down at the bottom in front of the castle, and so that's what I'm doing. I'm making it into a tree. Happy about this because I'm losing the top of my tower, and I think that's one of the prettiest parts of the castle, but we'll see what happens. Sometimes they just don't work the way you want them to, and sometimes you do have to give up on them. I keep working on this. I realize after I put in this tree that maybe it would have been better to have a tree branch up in the air instead of this awkward looking tree coming down in front of the castle. Too late now. I learned some things from this. Be careful about the paper being too wet, and to think about it a little more. I'm still trying to recover it. I'm still trying to make that work as a tree with some red in the leaves. And guess what? Even the masters had days when things were a little off, when it just didn't work. One of the reasons I'm going ahead and putting this video, even though this is a horrible picture, I'm going to go ahead and put this video up because so many of you say, oh, I can't do this, and oh, my painting is terrible, and I had it, and you give up. And I do some fairly decent watercolors now and then. This doesn't happen to be one of them. And I turn some wipe-off pages into things that I enjoy looking at later. This doesn't happen to be one of them. And I think you need to realize those people who have just come into art and haven't been doing it very long, and you're insecure about what you're doing, you need to realize that we all have off days. And not everything we do is going to turn out into a good painting. There's some sections of this that I can probably save and use. I think the little flower sections over there are pretty nice. Up in the tree areas, there's lots of good color. And I could probably cut this up and save it. Point being, don't get discouraged because you do a flop. Everybody does a flop. And I guess I don't give up easily because I'm still trying to save this baby. It's beyond repair, I think. But it could become something smaller, as I said, like ATCs or inches, and I will get my mileage out of it. I do believe that I could look at this painting now, take this idea and the things I learned from painting this one, I could make another one and end up with something that's much more attractive than what I have here. I may decide to do that. If I do, I'll make a video on it. If I don't, well, it'll go in the inchy box. So this time, as I'm signing out of the video, I'm not going to say if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. I'm going to say if you identify with this video, give me a thumbs up. I'd appreciate it if you make a comment, share on your social media, and if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do that. I'll do some better paintings in the future and some better instruction.